Ukraine's vast drone army continues to diversify and expand, with many of the latest models boasting big improvements over their predecessors, like extended range and larger warheads. One of the newest models, the ZIRKA, has an even more important advantage: its own brain. Able to automatically find, track and eliminate enemy threats without having to be piloted or controlled by a real person, this is the next evolution of unmanned aerial vehicle (UAV) technology. A truly inhuman hunter let loose in the skies above Ukraine with one goal, and one goal only: to find and destroy as many Russian drones as possible. The potential impact of a drone like this cannot be understated. But before we explore how it might change the battlefield in the months to come, let's first take a look at its development and design. The ZIRKA is the brainchild of not one but two separate Ukrainian defense companies, NOCTIS and Vyriy Industries. NOCTIS is a defense technology company that specializes in unmanned systems automation and interception technologies like intelligent counter-drone solutions. Rather than focusing on designing and developing brand new hardware from scratch, this company instead tends to focus its efforts on developing automated systems like target tracking and interception algorithms that can make drones smarter and more lethal hunters while easing the burden on human operators. Vyriy Industries, meanwhile, began life as a small-scale wartime startup in Kyiv, but has since become one of Ukraine's leading manufacturers of advanced unmanned aerial systems, electronic components, and military software. It produces UAVs like the Vyriy 15 Kamikaze drone and the Vyriy Opto 15 fiber optic UAV, along with drone accessories like the Mara Pro drone-mounted relay system and the Vyriy 19 ground station, with over 80% of its drone components made domestically in Ukraine. Development work on the new ZIRKA drone was primarily carried out by NOCTIS, with Vyriy providing investment support and production expertise to help produce the best possible product. Because they weren't building just any drone, this was a drone with a very specific purpose. It needed to be the ultimate Shahed killer. Shahed drones originated in Iran and were first supplied to Russia during the early stages of the war in Ukraine back in 2022. The Russian military later began modifying and mass-producing these assets, as well as giving them a new name, Gerun 2, but much of the world still refers to them as Shaheds. Over the course of the conflict, they've been used to devastating effect in countless attacks on Ukrainian towns and cities, targeting both military and civilian infrastructure. To ensure that these attacks deal the most damage possible, Russian factories produce thousands of units per month, its commanders order the deployment of vast swarms over the border and into Ukraine, and the Kremlin's engineers have continuously found ways to improve their drones' capabilities. Originally, for example, the Shaheds were only able to carry warheads weighing up to 50 kilograms, 110 pounds, but Russian engineers have found ways to make them even more destructive, and the latest variants are often equipped with 90-kilogram, 200-pound warheads instead. Russian teams have also developed jet-powered Shahed variants, capable of reaching astonishing speeds of 500 to 600 kilometers per hour, 300 to 370 miles per hour. But the vast majority rely on simpler, cheaper propellers for propulsion, giving them top speeds of around 185 kilometers per hour or 115 miles per hour. They typically fly at low altitudes and are used en masse in order to saturate and overwhelm Ukraine's air defenses. It's not uncommon to see 660 or more drones used in a single strike, for example, and Ukrainian media reports state that close to 60,000 of these drones have been launched by Russia since the war began. Fortunately, as the conflict has progressed, Ukraine's forces have found ways to deal with this deadly threat. They developed one of the most complex and effective air defense networks on the planet today, incorporating everything from AI-powered turrets to mobile fire groups, electronic warfare jammers, anti-aircraft guns, missile batteries, and even attack helicopters. It has had plenty of outside help too. Western allies have provided some of their best air defenses to Ukraine, and when the American telecommunications company Starlink learned that Russians were using its own satellites, it quickly cut off their access, disrupting their operations instantaneously. Even so, the swarms keep coming, and Russia's engineers keep on finding ways to make their drones more impactful, improving their navigation systems, optimizing their builds, and integrating ever smarter systems of electronic warfare resistance. In response, Ukraine continues to look for more efficient ways to eliminate these drones and nullify the threat they pose. One of the best methods they've found is to use interceptor drones. UAVs that are specifically designed not to carry out surveillance missions or strike ground-based targets, but to seek and destroy other UAVs in the air before they can reach their targets. This has proven exceptionally effective. Indeed, since Ukraine started expanding its interceptor arsenal, deploying such systems as the Wild Hornet Sting 2, the Skyfall P-1 Sun, and the Octopus 100, it's enjoyed much greater success when it comes to downing the majority of Russia's aerial assets. Indeed, there have been numerous cases in which Kyiv's forces used interceptors and other measures to eliminate close to 95% of the enemy's drones, saving countless lives in the process. It's no surprise, therefore, that Kyiv is keen to invest even more in this technology, with several of its biggest and best drone firms actively working on either upgrading existing interceptors or developing new ones. Which brings us back to the ZIRKA. Designed from the ground up by a specialized team of engineers and programmers with extensive field experience in counter-drone defense, this exciting interceptor was officially announced by Vyriy on June 30, 2026, with the company sharing a detailed list of the ZIRKA's technical specifications and unique capabilities. Aesthetically, the ZIRKA's bullet-like shape greatly resembles other interceptor drones used to great effect by Ukraine, like the P-1 Sun. The manufacturer has revealed they can reach speeds in excess of 340 km per hour or 211 miles per hour, and is able to operate at altitudes of 6 km or around 3.7 miles. It boasts an operational radius of up to 30 km, around 18.6 miles, and is able to stay in the air for up to 20 minutes at a time, which should be more than sufficient to allow it to find, track and engage enemy drones. And when it's time to engage those enemy targets, that's when the ZIRKA truly stands out and separates itself from the pack. Most other drones have to be manually guided from the point of takeoff until the moment when they find and begin tracking a target. Some of them have autonomous capabilities that allow their AI brains to take over during the final phase of flight, as they home in on their targets, but they still usually need human pilots for the earlier stages of their aerial journeys. The ZIRKA is different. According to Vyriy, this drone is able to automatically detect, track and neutralize aerial threats, even those that are moving at high speeds, without the need for continuous operator input. That makes all the difference. And it's the leading reason why this drone could easily emerge as the new leading light of Ukraine's interceptor army. Because if what Vyriy says about this drone is accurate, Ukraine could theoretically launch entire swarms of ZIRKAs into the skies without needing vast ground teams of pilots to control them. They'd effectively function in a similar way to fire-and-forget missiles, without having to be individually monitored and manually guided towards their target locations. You might expect that those kinds of advanced capacities would come at quite a high price, but here's another of the best things about the ZIRKA drone: it's astonishingly cheap. Vyriy Industries claim that each unit costs up to just $2,000. That means it may not be the cheapest interceptor on the market today. The P-1 Sun, for example, can be produced for around half that price, but the ZIRKA is by far the cheapest interceptor to come with its own automatic detection and guidance capabilities. It's an incredibly low price to pay for such an advanced piece of military hardware, and it's a testament to how efficient and cost-effective Ukraine's defense companies have become and how well they're able to operate within the tight time and financial constraints of the war today. This low price tag is also incredibly bad news for Russia, but before we explain why, if this is the kind of insight you want more of, make sure you're subscribed to the Military Show. We break it down like this every week. Now, we can't be sure of the exact price Russia pays to produce its Shahed drones. Different sources say different things, with some estimates as low as $20,000 per unit and others much higher, at up to $80,000. Logically, the true price likely sits somewhere in the middle of those two extremes, at around $50,000 for a typical Shahed or Gerin 2 drone. The relatively cheap production costs of these drones have presented Ukraine with a massive challenge since the first drones entered its airspace in 2022. How do you nullify a threat like that without wasting expensive munitions in the process? Because back before the days of interceptor drones, the only surefire way to down an enemy drone was with an interceptor missile. And interceptor missiles don't come cheap. Many of Ukraine's Western allies have been happy to provide these munitions over the years. The US has delivered the likes of the Patriot Pack missiles, for example, an AIM-120 Advanced Medium-Range Air-to-Air Missile, AMRAAMs. But AIM-120s cost around $1 million per missile, while PAC-2 and PAC-3 missiles cost several million each. Even some of the cheaper interceptors in Kyiv's arsenal, like the German Iris-T missiles, still cost several $100,000 per unit. And many of these munitions are only available in limited quantities. Ukraine only received around 600 Patriot missiles over the first 4 years of the war, for example. So, not only are these assets extremely valuable, but also rare. And there's no logic at all in firing a $1 million missile at a $50,000 drone, especially when the enemy can make and launch hundreds more of those $50,000 drones the very same day. Thus, Ukraine has had no other choice but to keep its interceptors in reserve and only use them to deal with larger, more expensive enemy threats like cruise missiles, while seeking dramatically cheaper ways to deal with the Shaheds. Fortunately, the country has risen to the challenge remarkably well, and the ZIRKA is just the latest piece of evidence to prove it. Because if you can take out a $50,000 enemy asset using a $2,000 weapon, that's an extremely cost-effective equation for you and an awful one for your opponent. If Ukraine can get enough ZIRKAs in the skies, each one of them that successfully eliminates a Russian Shahed is effectively dealing an estimated $48,000 net loss to the Kremlin. That's not a lot on its own when compared to Moscow's massive defense budget. But the cost of multiple downed drones soon add up, spiraling into the millions, potentially even the billions in the long term. Russia is already facing multiple economic crises, driven in large part by the spiraling costs of the war, the impact of Ukraine's drone strikes on its oil refineries, and the torrent of Western sanctions targeting its financial system. The ZIRKA is yet another way for Ukraine to make the war unsustainably expensive for its enemy, while also eliminating assets and protecting both people and infrastructure. Of course, the overall impact of this drone will depend on how well it's actually able to find and destroy Shaheds, but that doesn't seem like it will be much of a problem given the way in which it was designed. As previously mentioned, when they began work on the ZIRKA, NOCTIS and Vyriy Industries specifically intended it for it to be a Shahed killer. That means that every decision about its design was made with that objective in mind. Every component was carefully crafted and specifically selected in order to make this UAV a nightmare for its Russian counterparts. Nothing was left to chance. The design team even reached out to one of Ukraine's expert anti-Shahed battalions, known as DarkNode, for vital insights and advice on how to make their drone the best it could be. DarkNode crews rank among the most effective in Ukraine when it comes to finding and destroying Shahed drones, having eliminated over 1,500 of them in the war so far. They know these drones' designs like the back of their hand, and they also know the best ways to exploit their weaknesses. Their intelligence was invaluable for the engineers and developers working on this new Interceptor, and thanks to their hard work, the final product appears to have all the qualities and capacities necessary to nullify Shaheds with ease. It's worth noting, for example, that the ZIRKA can fly almost twice as fast as a typical Geran 2. That means that even if a Russian drone is approaching a Ukrainian city at full speed, a ZIRKA would still have ample time to take off, lock onto it, and catch up with it before it even came close to its intended target. Even if the Shahed attempted to execute evasive maneuvers, the ZIRKA's immense speed advantage should still prove sufficient to win the battle in the end. The autonomous features of the ZIRKA are also hugely advantageous. If these drones relied on manual operators, Ukraine would have to find and train countless more pilots to fly them, which would place strict limits on the total numbers of UAVs it can deploy at any given time. Thanks to the ZIRKA's AI systems, however, Ukraine could potentially launch whole swarms of these drones with only a single human supervisor to keep track of them and monitor their progress. This massively eases the burden on Ukrainian drone crews, while also making it easier for them to counteract the increasingly enormous swarms and saturation efforts of their enemies. That's incredibly important because Russian commanders continue to lean heavily on the concept of brute force tactics. They believe that the key to success lies in throwing greater and greater quantities of drones and missiles at their enemy, hoping that, even if a large part of those drones are intercepted en route, some will make it through and strike their targets. Over time, they hope that these attacks will deal enough damage that Ukraine is forced to give in and wave the white flag. Kyiv has been battling to find ways to deal with these increasingly enormous swarms, and the ZIRKA, together with other interceptors, looks like the ideal option. This whole story also serves to illustrate the drastic differences in tactics and adaptability between the two sides. On the one hand, there's Russia, which has continued to rely heavily on the same drones since the early stages of the war. Yes, its engineers have made some modifications over time, but the Shahed is still the cornerstone of the Kremlin's drone army, just as it was in 2022. Ukraine, meanwhile, has built a much more diverse UAV arsenal, developing everything from long-range scouts to Baba Yaga bomber drones and AI interceptors like the ZIRKA itself. In short, Ukraine has given Russia a dizzying array of threats to deal with, and the Kremlin has struggled to find ways to counter many of them. Russia, meanwhile, has stubbornly stuck to using the same drone type year after year, and Ukraine has used that time to develop dozens of effective ways to deal with it. The ZIRKA is just one of them, but it may turn out to be one of the best yet. And it seems that once again, there's very little that Russia will be able to do to stop this new drone from wreaking havoc on its own UAVs. An aviation and drone expert was interviewed by a popular Ukrainian news channel about the ZIRKA. When asked about how Russia could counter it, he noted that the Kremlin has tried to use the likes of onboard cameras and warning sensors fitted to its drones to help them detect nearby threats, as well as electronic warfare jammers designed to disrupt Ukrainian drone communications. He notes, however, that it's unlikely that any of these measures will prove effective against the ZIRKA. Its speed means that it doesn't really have to worry about being spotted by Shahed cameras, and its autonomous capabilities mean that it most likely won't be impacted by jammers either. The expert went on to note that Ukrainian defense firms are actively in the process of building closer ties with European partners in order to take their technologies to the next level. They're looking into options like more advanced computer vision, for example, advanced machine learning, and other stronger semiconductors to build drones that are stronger, smarter, and faster than those that already exist. Indeed, NOCTIS and Vyriy Industries say that they're already in the process of working on the ZIRKA 2.0, an upgraded version of this new drone. According to the NOCTIS development director, Oleksiy Komlichenko, the upcoming variant will have even more autonomous capabilities, upgraded optics that allow it to spot targets from further away, and an automatic proximity fuse, allowing to detonate its payload instantaneously as soon as it draws close enough to its target. In short, while Russia focuses on only making its drone army bigger, Ukraine is making its army smarter, stronger, and more effective. And so far, the Ukrainian method is winning. Now you can learn more about the kinds of chaos Ukrainian drones are causing for Russia in this video, which explores how Kyiv's forces have crippled the Kremlin's Black Sea fleet and dramatically minimized Vladimir Putin's sphere of power. Alternatively, check out this video for a look at the unfolding fuel crisis in Russia, with an increasingly frustrated Russian public forced to wait in hours-long queues for a single tank of gas. And finally, make sure to subscribe to The Military Show for more insights and breaking news reports you won't want to miss.